A couple of years following the launch of our bookstore with an integrated cafe, my spouse's closest companion, Gloria, requested a confidential discussion. Gloria, a First Nation member of the church where I was the head pastor, joined me outside at a curbside table after we had strong coffee. Gloria revealed that Vanessa, my wife, had been planning a divorce, believing the bookstore could now support her. Is she seeing someone else? Not that I know of, but she's been spending a lot of her free evenings with some of your single male tenants. She's made a lot of new, questionable friends in the past few months. I doubt any of them are aware of her ongoing mental health issues. Since her first breakdown, I've noticed a shift in her personality, so I can't rule out the possibility of an affair. But what's more concerning is that I don't really know her anymore, so I can't say for certain she wouldn't be involved in one, Gloria explained with a tone of sadness. She also said that during regular coffee meetings with other church ladies at the bookstore, Vanessa had expressed doubts about our marriage and made it clear she had never planned to marry me, Gloria continued, revealing that Vanessa had initially seen our long-distance relationship as a temporary distraction while she sought a wealthy older man. Despite being 5 years younger, my persistent pursuit and high moral standards impressed Vanessa. She was frustrated by my restraint and high standards, which led her to compare me unfavorably to other suitors. Eventually, she admitted that she had fallen in love with me. Reflecting on this, I remembered the long drives to see Vanessa, the hefty phone bills, and our limited meetings before marriage. Vanessa, having escaped the Hungarian Revolution with her mother and endured hardship, had a troubled background similar to mine. Her father passed in Russian prison for his resistance work, and she grew up with a difficult family life, including foster care. Gloria pointed out that Vanessa struggled with not being able to fully connect with me physically due to our long-distance relationship. The financial strain added to her frustration, but she agreed to marry me, proud of my appointment as junior pastor. However, she missed her former wild lifestyle. Despite our growing success and the birth of our 2 children, Vanessa felt overwhelmed and trapped, which contributed to her mental breakdown. I was shocked, questioning whether I had been blind to her true feelings. Despite my efforts to provide her with the lifestyle she wanted, I wondered if I was truly to blame for her dissatisfaction. Vanessa found my calm demeanor frustrating, interpreting it as a sign of weakness. Her past with offensive men likely influenced this view. I shared that while Vanessa grew up in a broken home, my upbringing was marked by my parents' controlled alcoholism. Their frequent, intense arguments left me hiding under the bed, exposed to their lack of forgiveness and love. Their primary reason for staying together was to keep their children. At 10, I discovered my mother and my father's best friend in an affair. Despite confronting her, my mother denied it and accused me of lying. This betrayal led to a painful childhood, marked by repeated discoveries of their affair and my father's increasing alcoholism. To protect her secret, my mother's actions led to my life becoming a nightmare. I caught her in multiple affairs, which resulted in the birth of my younger sister. My father, overwhelmed with grief, turned to alcohol. This painful situation shaped my vow never to express anger, and my decision to withhold intimacy from Vanessa was to determine if she was suitable to be the mother of my children. Vanessa only learned of these issues after the birth of our second son, James. During subsequent therapy sessions, I discovered she blamed me for her mental health struggles. Her psychiatrist suggested that my own troubled childhood affected my perspective and behavior. Over the past decade, Vanessa's severe mental health breakdowns seemed to confirm this assessment. Her love turned to hatred, seeing me as the source of her problems. Gloria pointed out my significant contributions as a husband. She noted that I started our business from a small flea market booth and expanded it as Vanessa's confidence grew. Despite my efforts and improvements, such as doubling sales with a new store layout, Vanessa now claimed I had built the business to trap her, giving me no credit for my achievements. Reflecting on my past, I recalled taking Vanessa to meet my parents. After years away, including a difficult period running away from home at 16 and working through school, I had returned briefly. This visit was a rare occasion for me, marking the second time in 9 years that I had been home. During the visit, my family was on their best behavior. We found the wedding ring set we wanted and got engaged in the mall parking lot. That night, my father welcomed Vanessa warmly, making a comment that left me questioning if I had been a fool for Vanessa. Gloria later revealed that Vanessa was about 8 weeks pregnant. She had begun distancing herself from her longtime friends, including those in our church. Gloria had to end her relationship with Vanessa, who had angrily accused her of being involved with me. In a moment of frustration, Gloria slapped Vanessa, who only laughed and dismissed her warnings. Gloria was concerned that it might be too late for Vanessa to change. Gloria also informed me that our communication channels were compromised, including at home and in the church. She had seen printouts of my conversations, including a private chat with Bill Johnston about his duality. This revelation shocked me, as exposure of Bill's duality could lead to both of us being removed from the church. She disclosed that Vanessa's accomplices were preparing for a multifaceted attack involving the church, social services, the police, and the courts to destabilize me quickly. I appreciated Gloria's support and hoped our friendship would endure through this ordeal. I was determined to handle Vanessa's plans with the insight Gloria had provided. The week passed quietly, except for a few hours on Friday when I noticed Vanessa's puzzled glances. It seemed that whenever I left the store, my cell phone was left behind, which I used as an opportunity to confirm Gloria's information. It turned out to be accurate. I contacted my lawyer to start preparing a defense strategy, anticipating Vanessa's next moves. On Sunday, I addressed forgiveness, love, and mercy in my sermon, which deeply moved many in the congregation. After brunch, I returned to the store waiting for an acquaintance. At nearly 6 in the evening, Big John arrived. I brought out 2 iced teas and sat down with him. John, a large and imposing man, worked part-time as a collector and full-time managing a construction team. I had met him when he thanked me for something I had done, though I was unaware of the specifics until I learned that a former employee, Nina Marks, was a distant relative of his. Nina had stood out on a chilly fall evening, marking her territory in a way that suggested she didn't belong on the street. With her striking appearance and elegant style, it was clear she was out of place. The street people quickly learned she was not to be bothered, as doing so would mean facing me. I kept a close watch, expecting trouble to arise soon. 3 weeks later, on a frigid night, Nina entered the store asking about the cost of a small coffee and counted out pennies. I offered her a large cup of coffee and joined her at a table. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup, revealing a deep sadness in her eyes. Nina shared her troubles. Her husband had left after their first child was born, she was behind on rent, and social services had denied her aid. She was struggling to balance her last year of university with financial pressures and had been trying to survive by selling herself on the street, with no success. Feeling at her limit, she was desperate for help. I assured her that I would arrange for her to move into a rent-free apartment the next day. While she was at school, she could bring her baby to work at the store. Although it was minimum wage, it provided a stable job and allowed her to continue her studies. I offered this help because I had once been in a similar situation and received kindness from a stranger. Nina later learned from others at the store that, out of respect for me, no one had approached her on the street. They believed she didn't belong there and that something more was going on in her life. At her graduation, Nina asked me to be her escort, and I gladly attended despite my wife's objections. During the event, Nina shared her story and announced her new job with the government agency that had previously denied her assistance. John later revealed that our computers at home, the church, and the store had been compromised and turned into data sources and listening devices. The breach traced back to Tony Landers, a tech specialist working for the government. John advised getting a new phone immediately to prevent further contamination and mentioned that Tony had been boasting about his new girlfriend, who was reportedly set to come into a significant fortune. I now had a name. Tony Landers, a solid, imposing figure with a tough reputation. I needed to connect the dots. John agreed to help me with Nina's unlisted number, emphasizing her loyalty and her ongoing work to monitor my situation. Nina, who had been offered dates since working for social services, declined them, stating she wanted to be there for someone she cared about during a difficult time. She also unofficially informed me that an investigation into my relationship with my children was underway. Later, my oldest son, Adam, visited the store. He had overheard his mother talking about maintaining a facade of love until it would soon end, and had discovered her relationship with Tony. Adam was unsure if it was physical or emotional. I explained to Adam that his mother was about 8 weeks pregnant and that the baby was not mine. I had confirmed through a termination appointment that she planned to terminate the pregnancy. I was arranging for a DNA test to prove the baby wasn't mine, necessary for legal and church reasons. I also warned Adam that a contentious divorce was imminent, with possible false claims about our family. Adam was shocked, but relieved that I was aware of the situation. I explained that people with mental health issues often distort reality, which can lead to destructive behavior. I had anticipated these problems, even if I didn't know when they would arise. The family doctor's appointment went smoothly, despite initially being tense after I served him. He was taken aback when I mentioned knowing about my wife's clinic appointment and my need to prove the fetus wasn't mine. The doctor understood the seriousness of my situation and my concerns about my wife's mental state. John arrived around 7 p.m. and we headed to the Army and Navy bar where he signed me in. After ordering drinks, I handed him a paper with my new phone number, my lawyer's contact details, and my doctor's office address. John was pleased and realized I had paid for Nina's legal services. I asked him to ensure Nina only contacted me through my lawyer and requested help with obtaining Vanessa's medical records discreetly and dealing with Tony Landers in a way that made him feel responsible for his involvement with Vanessa. John mentioned that Nina had told him I was known for standing my ground and not backing down. He also revealed that James and Shariah Duncan were connected to Sean McKay, a money launderer currently in prison. John promised to inform his contacts about my contributions to the Duncan family's well-being. I explained that my grandfather, who had raised 16 children while being a poor dirt farmer, taught me to treat people well because I would need them in tough times. John admired my grandfather's wisdom. That night, John and I drank heavily at the bar and were kicked out at closing time. I somehow made it back to the store where I woke up on the carpet floor, barely making it to the bathroom before vomiting. Nina confronted Johnny about allowing me to get drunk, as she felt it was irresponsible, given my usual moderation. Nina, who referred to Johnny as uncle out of respect, was prepared to hold him accountable if he had embarrassed me. Johnny argued that the drunkenness might have been a release for me, given the immense stress I was under due to my wife's mental health issues and my role in raising our children. Johnny revealed that I had been enduring verbal offense from Vanessa, who resented anyone I tried to help. Despite Vanessa's hostility, I remained calm, only showing my anger when she demanded I fire Nina. Johnny disclosed that I had secretly covered the cost of Nina's divorce, paying her ex-husband $15,000 to sign off. This revelation led Nina to sob, and Johnny urged her to speak with Stephen, her lawyer. He promised to provide my new contact information once Nina was ready. Deborah Preston, a middle-aged field officer, overheard Nina's sobs and invited her into her office. As Nina explained her situation, Deborah became emotional as well. Nina revealed her former married name, which would help Deborah in investigating the charges against me. Deborah, who was tasked with looking into the allegations against me, sought to verify if Vanessa's claims were credible and if she had mental health issues. This case was crucial to Deborah's supervisor, adding urgency to the investigation. Vanessa was alarmed when I didn't return home, and my cell phone was found on the store counter. My usual practice of keeping her informed had been disrupted, leading her to worry about my sudden change in behavior. She repeatedly called the church, only to find the service unavailable, and contacted Tony and her new friends to keep watch for my car. She spent the day anxiously waiting for updates. At the church, I called an emergency meeting with the deacons and elders, informing them of my impending divorce and the compromised communications. I warned that any personal leaks could result in a lawsuit. During the meeting, the financial planner admitted to an internal theft, prompting an investigation involving the police and the church's communications security. I privately arranged time off with the head deacon, who suggested I take my sons on vacation while I found a new place to live. In the meantime, the deacon offered to have my assistant manage the church affairs. When Vanessa came home later than usual, she found the house unusually quiet, and the boys were missing. There was a note from me on the fridge, explaining that I had spent the night with the police due to some church-related issues. I planned to take the boys on a fishing trip for at least a week and return once the police finished their investigation. Vanessa seemed relieved, probably seeing my gesture as overcompensation for not spending enough quality time with the boys. She likely thought it confirmed that I was unaware of what was really going on. With the boys out of the way, Vanessa called her lover, Tony. Later, Paul, the head deacon, saw Tony arriving at our house with suitcases. On Thursday morning, Stephen Pollard arrived at his office early and discovered a manila envelope with my name on it. Inside were copies of my family's medical records, accompanied by a note from some of my friends. Stephen photographed the contents and sent them to his secretary for copying and filing with social services. Nina, my first client of the day, arrived on time. Stephen informed her that I anticipated Vanessa would allege an affair, so an affidavit detailing our relationship was needed. It took 3 hours for the affidavit to be completed. Stephen also provided Nina with a power of attorney from me and a warning about Vanessa's unstable mental state, advising her to be cautious. Nina opened the envelope and read a handwritten note detailing instructions from me. I had refinanced my apartment buildings, taking out as much equity as possible to protect my assets in the event of a divorce. I instructed Nina to open a joint account in both our names and deposit the funds from the $1.1 million check I had provided. The funds were to be invested in short-term guaranteed banknotes to ensure security for her and her son. The envelope also contained photocopies of my vital information. Stephen, who had handed Nina the check, saw her tears and remarked on the trust I had placed in her. Nina expressed her deep feelings for me and her regret that she couldn't do more. Stephen reassured her, mentioning that I likely knew her true feelings and was always ahead of the game. He revealed that he had found and sent copies of important records related to my family and my soon-to-be ex-wife. He also presented Nina with a copy of her son's new birth certificate, reflecting the legal change to remove her former husband's name. Stephen had managed to obtain a court order to amend the birth certificate by having Nina's ex-husband swear an affidavit admitting to forgery. Nina expressed her gratitude, and Stephen suggested she marry me as soon as possible and name their next child after him. Cora Porter, who had been the area supervisor for just over 2 years, was known for her tough but fair approach and thorough investigations. When Deborah Preston was summoned to Cora's office, she suspected the update was about my case. Cora had previously stressed the importance of keeping the investigation into my case quiet, given my prominent role as a pastor and the potential for public fallout if the charges were true. During their meeting, Cora expressed relief that the investigation had not yet ruined my reputation. She revealed that Nina and I appeared to have feelings for each other, but neither of us was aware of the other's emotions. Cora also mentioned that they had received the McGregor family medical records from Stephen Pollard's office. These records detailed Vanessa's long-term mental health issues and a recent diagnosis of another breakdown. They also included information about an upcoming termination and my efforts to prove I was not the father, including a DNA paternity test for my children. Importantly, there was no evidence supporting Vanessa's abuse claims. Deborah shared details from Nina's past, noting that her husband had left her after 8 years of marriage, just after their son's birth. Despite requesting help, Nina's case had been dismissed at the time. Deborah regretted that they hadn't followed up, especially since Nina's former husband had moved out of state, leaving her in a desperate situation. Cora went pale and trembled upon hearing the details. I had publicly declared that Nina was to be left alone, a directive that was respected due to my authority. I had personally helped Nina by providing her with free rent and a job that allowed her to care for her baby. This was confirmed by multiple clients who spoke highly of both Nina and me, in stark contrast to Vanessa's accusations. Deborah recounted an instance where I had gone beyond the call of duty to help a couple in need, offering them food and cash instead of just money. This act of kindness led to Vanessa publicly denouncing me for weeks, criticizing me for giving away resources that could have been used by the family. Cora mentioned that her husband, the head deacon at our community church, had reported Vanessa's lover moving in shortly after I left town. Deborah revealed that Vanessa's complaint, which included her lawyer's name, was part of the package submitted to the court. She had also omitted to inform Nina that Vanessa was claiming I was the father of her son. Cora noted Nina's morning request for time off due to a lawyer's appointment, suggesting I was preparing to contest the false claims. My calm demeanor was attributed to my thorough preparation for all possible outcomes. Cora instructed Deborah to send a copy of her findings to Stephen Pollard and to include the oversight regarding Nina in her report. Cora expressed satisfaction when she learned that Nina's reluctance for dates was due to her existing feelings for someone else, rather than being unapproachable. When Nina returned to her desk, she struggled to focus on work, preoccupied with concerns about my situation. Cora later summoned Nina to her office, where she acknowledged her past mistake in not following up on Nina's case and apologized for it. She informed Nina that I had been cleared of all charges thanks to Stephen Pollard, though the file would remain open by state law for 6 months. Nina felt a wave of relief as Cora informed her of her promotion to a salaried field caseworker starting next month. Cora explained that Nina's time card for the day had been adjusted to reflect field training work. Cora, whose husband is the head deacon of our church and someone I respect, shared that Vanessa's boyfriend had moved in with her since I left with the boys. Deborah would be sending Stephen Pollard all the gathered information, including Vanessa's accusations of adultery, child molestation, and cruelty against me, as well as claims that I was the father of Nina's son. Nina mentioned that I had communicated through a mutual friend about needing to see Stephen Pollard, explaining her morning request for time off. Cora then revealed that I had been taken out and gotten drunk by a friend, which had surprisingly relieved my stress. I would be moving into a house on Cora's property, which she had arranged to be cleaned and furnished for me. When Nina asked about changing her name to McGregor, Cora acknowledged it was to honor me, whom Nina had loved for years. Cora suggested they go to lunch to meet her husband Paul and discuss further plans. On Monday morning, I parked in front of a warehouse store to pick up packing boxes for our move while my sons finished their breakfast. After paying for the boxes, we returned home around 9 o'clock. I began by typing and printing a letter for my soon-to-be ex, then quickly packed my hanging clothes into wardrobe boxes. The rest of the belongings, including tools, books, church materials, and office supplies, followed. I let Adam choose some tools to keep and put the rest in the moving boxes. I left my household keys and the letter on the kitchen table and gave my wedding band to my oldest son, telling him it was his responsibility now. An hour later, I started unloading my things at the new house, a spacious 2,400 square foot, 2-level, 3-bedroom home with a small room for my office. I had the electricity turned on and was almost finished when Paul arrived and invited me to dinner at the main house. After a quick wash-up, we went to the main house where Cora greeted us with a cold beer. Cora was unusually cheerful as she went back inside to prepare supper. Paul informed me that our financial planner had been charged with theft, resulting in a loss of over $75,000. 2 staff members were under suspension, and hacking was linked to Tony Lander's apartment and the local state prison with charges forthcoming. I acted surprised when Vanessa arrived home and noticed her husband's car was missing. The boys got very quiet. Adam pointed to the envelope laying on the kitchen table. "Dad's not stupid, Mom," he said. "He told us and prepared us for it last week. We helped him move out." Adam and James watched as their mother's face turned pale. When she pulled out the letter, she saw his house keys drop onto the table. The letter said, "I know about your termination. I know your lover was in our bed this past week. I know about the child services. Here are the house keys. I've taken what I wanted. I will be changing the store locks tomorrow. You can pick up your termination papers and final paycheck then. You're free now to let Tony Landers move back in." Vanessa began to cry because things hadn't gone as planned. She wanted him to be utterly defeated and destitute, living among the street people he used to help. Her chance for revenge was slipping away. Since he had ruined her life, she felt he needed to suffer. She vowed to find another way. Paul and I were in the middle of our second beer when we heard the doorbell ring. I saw a big smile spread across his face, which meant something was up, so I braced myself. Cora has formed an unusually close bond with a coworker due to the issues at work, church, and with you. I think she's taken it too far. Her coworker once needed help from social services, and Cora made a mess of it. Cora says she's becoming the daughter she always wanted. My youngest son wanted to ask her out when he met her, but Cora quickly shut that down. After talking to me, Cora convinced me that things needed to be set right. "Sorry, David, but we're both setting you up tonight," Paul said. "I think you'll be very happy with what happens next." Paul wasn't someone who plotted schemes, so I was completely puzzled trying to figure out who we both knew that they wanted me to meet. There was Nina, but no one knew how I felt about her. She was just one of many people I'd helped. I heard footsteps approaching, stood up, and turned towards Cora and her friend. I was taken aback. Nina looked incredible. "David, I believe you've met my coworker. In fact, I know you know my old friends," Cora said with excitement. "This is Miss Nina McGregor. Nina, this is David." Nina ran into my arms before I could speak, and we both burst into tears. Our first kiss, with tears of joy streaming down our faces, remains unforgettable. We were emotional wrecks, but didn't care, especially as I realized she had taken my last name. Cora and Paul, seeing us in each other's arms, decided to give us privacy and went inside. They reflected on their own experiences, comparing our reunion to Paul's homecomings from the army. They felt a deeper appreciation for our emotions and were pleased with how everything had unfolded. Cora mentioned that, unlike their situation, where they communicated daily through letters, I, a pastor and married man, couldn't openly express his feelings. Vanessa's actions had led to our moment, which Cora saw as perhaps a positive outcome. She suggested celebrating with champagne and recounting how our meeting came about. When Cora and Paul rejoined us, Nina and I, still holding hands, noticed their happy expressions. Though meeting her had been long overdue, it complicated my position with the church, and I knew I had to consider resigning as a pastor since I was still legally married. On Sunday, the service was shortened, but still ran an hour over time as we explained the theft, communication breaches, and ongoing investigations to the parish. The focus was on the situation involving Nina and me. The deacons had a plan but needed the parish's approval. Cora addressed the congregation, clarifying the false charges against me and disclosing that social services had found them untrue. She also revealed that Vanessa had a termination and that the medical records confirmed it was not my child. Paul showed video evidence of Vanessa's boyfriend moving in while I was away. Sister Gloria then spoke about the loveless marriage, verbal offense, and Vanessa's mental health breakdown, which was a shock to many. Gloria admitted to informing me about the situation and expressed concern that Vanessa might cause harm. Paul explained that the deacons had agreed to recognize my divorce if the congregation concurred, and every adult showed their approval. Cora then detailed how Vanessa tried to tarnish my reputation, how she and I met through work and acknowledged her own mistakes. She assured the parish of our genuine feelings, even though we had not acted on them. Paul concluded by announcing that I would live in what was once his parents' house, and explained that, biblically, marriage could be recognized once Nina had an engagement ring. The deacons proposed that we would be considered man and wife once this occurred, and the parish agreed. With everything settled, Cora invited us to dinner, leaving us to enjoy the rest of the evening. Paul offered to lead grace, but I declined, overwhelmed by my emotions. With Nina by my side, I couldn't take my eyes off her, both of us beaming with joy. The meal was exceptional, with steak, baked potato, corn, and salad prepared by Cora. As Cora cleared the table before dessert, she noticed my sudden silence and expressed concern. I admitted my distraction was due to my focus on Nina, neglecting to ask about her son. Nina laughed and explained that her son, David John McGregor, was staying with Uncle John and Aunt Margaret. She warned that Uncle John liked to sing Irish songs when drinking, which surprised Cora and Paul. Nina then revealed that due to a court order, Steve Pollard's original birth certificate was thrown out, and I was now listed as the birth father of her son, making me the legal father. After dinner, Paul and I retired to the den while the ladies cleaned up. Paul praised Nina's unwavering love and advised me to get an engagement ring for her immediately. Following his advice, I asked Nina to drive me to the mall. We went to Gerard's, where she chose a 3-ring set. I bought the ring, then proposed on my knees. Nina blushed and accepted. We went to Nina's apartment to collect some clothing before heading to our new home. She sent a picture of the ring to Cora and Aunt Marge, texting them until we arrived. Cora had informed Nina that she wouldn't need to come into work due to field training, and advised that I should visit Deborah to confirm our conversation. Although I wished we could have spent the night making passionate love, we were still floating on cloud 9. I regretted not planning a romantic dinner, but Nina laughed it off. We ended up falling asleep fully clothed on the bed, waking up repeatedly as if to confirm our new reality. On Tuesday morning, Cora arrived at work glowing and a bit late, sparking curiosity about her happiness. She was pleased with how her plans had turned out and looked forward to having a little one around again, especially with her sons and grandchildren living far away. Nina and I met John and Marge at Denny's for breakfast and enjoyed spending time with little Johnny, who warmed up to me quickly. We then got to work sorting through Nina's belongings. We first loaded items for storage using wardrobe boxes, then packed up the baby furniture and returned to the apartment while the girls cleaned. After dropping off the storage items, we took the rest to Goodwill. By 1 o'clock, we had finished, and Nina headed to work. Around 4 o'clock, I arrived at the social services office and found Deborah there. As I waited for her, she was surprised to see me with a 2-year-old in a diaper bag. When we reached her office, Deborah asked about the child. I explained that this little boy had recently come back into my life thanks to some special friends. Nina arrived just then, sliding her hand into mine and insisting that any matters involving me now included her. Deborah was astonished, but Nina proudly showed off her engagement ring and announced our plans. Deborah congratulated us, and Nina introduced her son. The commotion attracted a crowd, and Cora stepped in to take Johnny from me and manage the situation. As Deborah took notes, someone made a comment about missing out on opportunities, and we spent the last hour chatting. On the way home, Nina and I stopped at the grocery store for some basics. I pushed Johnny while Nina shopped, and we used 2 carts. I was busy entertaining Johnny when I heard a commotion and saw Nina confronting Vanessa. Their intense confrontation drew attention from everyone around. Vanessa, you clueless hoe, I've been waiting for this moment, Nina snapped, getting right in Vanessa's face. I knew you two were involved, Vanessa retorted, raising her hand to slap Nina with a resounding crack. The slap left a red mark on Nina's cheek. Vanessa immediately launched into a tirade of insults. Nina's first punch landed in Vanessa's stomach. Vanessa retaliated with equal force. The fight was fierce. I stepped back, not wanting to get caught in the middle of their fury. Their escalating anger was drawing a crowd. Vanessa, you blame him for your pathetic life, but I thank him for saving mine. You threw everything away just for revenge. It's not going to work, witch, Nina said. So I owe you a thanks for pushing him to me. He's mine now. If you go after him, you're going through me. I can be as ruthless as you because I've learned from watching you. They lunged at each other, their hands and bodies colliding in a brutal exchange. Nina managed to take Vanessa down and land on top of her. The way Vanessa hit the floor meant her hip would be sore for days. Both women continued to throw punches as they struggled. Eventually, store staff arrived to separate them. As they dragged Vanessa away, she shouted, "We're not done! I'm going to make you pay!" Nina fired back, "Bring it on, witch!" Nina then gave me a passionate kiss in front of everyone and yelled, "Vanessa, remember! I fight for my man!" Vanessa began to cry. Things were clearly falling apart for her, and I could see she was losing control. At 10 in the morning, while I was at my store after just appointing a new manager and 2 assistants, I was served legal papers. The documents included a court order that froze all our bank accounts and barred me from coming within 500 feet of her or our kids. This confirmed my suspicions. I was clearly winning this battle. I called Steve Pollard's office, asking for a copy of the store's incorporation papers to prove my ownership, as things were reaching a critical point. I had my staff send him a fax of the divorce papers. Moments later, my soon-to-be ex-wife's youngest brother showed up on his motorcycle. He dismounted and walked straight up to me. "Listen, you piece of crap. If you lay a hand on my sister or your sons again, I'll kill you," he threatened. "She's told me everything. I know about your affair and the new kid you've got. The idiot was falling for her lies." I chuckled. "Oh, really? Maybe you should check with Tony Lander, the guy she's living with now. Better yet, have you spoken to our sons?" His face flushed when I mentioned recording his threat and passing it on. Immature and living at home, he spent his earnings on pills and had even tried to involve my oldest son in buying them. Around 1 o'clock, Vanessa arrived at the store with 2 police officers while the locksmith was changing the locks. She had a court order claiming the store as a marital asset and tried to evict me. I showed the corporation papers proving the store belonged to the company. The police voided the court order after reviewing this. I then gave Vanessa her termination papers, which caused her to lose her composure and scream in frustration. I addressed entrapment by showing the police my restraining order. They escorted Vanessa out, attempting to calm her, which gave me satisfaction knowing her actions would be recorded poorly. Later, I settled Johnny for the night. As the house felt more like home, Nina and I prepared our first meal together with Johnny happily in his high chair, growing more attached to me. We shared a deep kiss, expressing our love, then dried off and climbed into bed, feeling the intensity of our emotions. After Nina left to drop off Johnny and head to work, I prepared the outline for Sunday's sermon on Matthew 5:7. "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." I spent over 4 hours crafting a 45-minute sermon with 8 scriptures and 2 illustrations and sent a copy to my assistant. Returning to my regular schedule, I informed the receptionist of my return, shaved, and dressed in a suit. In the evening, I worked on the sermon in my home office, refining it through rehearsal. Nina observed from the doorway and appreciated the effort I put into each revision. I explained that each sermon outline follows a theme with major points, and that I aim to simplify the message so it resonates and sticks with listeners, much like a great teacher leaves an impression. On Friday night, while I was working on paperwork at the store, my youngest son, James, arrived. At just 10 years old, he was quite large for his age. The moment I saw him, I could tell he was upset. His clothes were dirty, and his face was streaked with tears. I grabbed a couple of Cokes and muffins and took him to the farthest table from the store's entrance. "What's wrong, James?" I asked. "I heard Mom and Tony yelling loudly. It scared me," James replied. I understood how he felt. I'd experienced the same thing as a child. I explained why he had never heard his mother and me argue like that. "James, for many people, what your mom and Tony were doing is pretty common. Sometimes serious discussions get heated because our emotions can take over. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do. Neither of them will listen to me," I said, showing genuine concern. "Can I come stay with you for a few days?" James asked. I got up, telling him I'd be right back. I went to retrieve the restraining order from the file and handed it to James so he could read it. James, I wish I could say yes, but unfortunately, the court order your mother got makes that impossible. If I took you in, I could be arrested and jailed, I explained. Just then, one of the clerks came in and said, It's your wife on the phone. She's demanding to speak with you. I brought James into the small office and asked him to stay quiet before turning on the phone speaker. Hello, Vanessa. What do you want? I said. James saw Tony and me arguing. He's gone missing and I think he's heading your way. If you spot him, send him back home. The court order is clear that you're not allowed to have any contact with him. If you don't send him back, I'll call the police. If he's with you, you're in serious trouble, Vanessa warned. I'd love to see you behind bars. James heard that and dashed out telling a clerk, Tell my dad I was never here, before leaving the store. By the time I ended the call and got to the door, he was already gone. I contacted the police station, explained the situation, and faxed them a photo from my wallet. The officer confirmed they would issue an alert. I called Nina to update her on what happened. She knew I was concerned. Stay at the store. The elementary school teaches kids to call 911 if they're in danger. James might do that. If he does, they'll forward his call to the Child Services emergency line. Only they can override the state court order, Nina advised. James ran off to protect you. I knew Nina was right about not being overly anxious. I kept checking the store, waiting to see if James would show up. My staff reassured me that everything would be okay. After about an hour, I got a call from social services confirming that James had done what Nina suspected. I explained the court order and my cleared investigation to the representative, who then asked if I could take James in. I informed her about a 3-bedroom furnished home ready for James and his brother. The representative warned that James's mother threatened to have me jailed and would send a temporary custody order and notify the police. Soon after, James arrived at the store. Nina, who had previously spoiled him, greeted him warmly. We shopped for clothes and essentials, buying more than needed at Walmart and Macy's. Nina insisted James try on a suit for his first church visit, stressing the importance of first impressions. James adapted well and chose to call Nina second mom, agreeing to be the ring bearer at our wedding. At the church, Paul and Cora welcomed us. Cora took Johnny and proudly called herself his great godmother. Nina was admired for her beauty and ring, and James introduced her as his second mom. I delivered a sermon on the Beatitudes from Matthew 5, focusing on Christian values and the importance of appreciating spouses. I concluded with a reflection from Hebrews on forgiveness and caution. After the service, Nina received advice on being a pastor's wife. We had brunch, where Marge praised the sermon and Paul encouraged James's interest in farming. A few weeks later, as my divorce court date approached, I covered the store due to a staff illness. After closing up, I was attacked and felt a knife wound my side before collapsing. I woke up in the hospital, disoriented and drained, but a persistent voice kept me awake. Nina was relieved to see me and attributed my recovery to her prayers. Doctors and nurses surrounded me, adjusting tubes and checking my vitals. They noted it had been a close call and praised Nina's determination. Nina explained that I had been stabbed 7 times after leaving the store. Uncle John had called 911 and tried to stop the bleeding. Despite the severity, Nina had remained hopeful. 8 pints of blood were used to stabilize me. The doctor said I was stabilizing and would likely be released in about a week if there were no complications. I saw Nina's worry and exhaustion as the morning light streamed through the window. She kissed my cheek, tears of relief streaming down her face. I wanted to hold her but lacked the strength. I called for a nurse's aide to find Cora and Paul. They arrived soon after, and Cora helped calm Nina. We discussed my situation, including that our boys were with Marge and John. The nurse reminded us I needed rest, so Cora and Paul had to leave. Paul informed me that the attacker, a mentally challenged adult who admitted to knowing Vanessa, had been caught. Nina recalled Stephen Pollard's warning about Vanessa's potential danger and her power of attorney. I worried about whether the police could link the attack to Vanessa if no money had changed hands, and asked Nina to have Uncle John avoid doing anything rash. Over the next 10 days, Nina faced challenges, but Cora and Paul supported us. Paul and James grew close through farm work, which Paul found more fulfilling than his relationships with his own children. When I returned home on Friday morning, Nina began to relax. We planned dinner with Marge and John for Saturday. Nina had feared becoming a widow before our marriage. I called Stephen's office to leave a message for him to return my call. With Johnny napping and James working in the fields with Paul, I rested in bed watching TV. Nina joined me and we cuddled and whispered, "I love you" to each other, reconnecting in a comforting and intimate way. James burst into the room, excitedly announcing that Grandpa Paul wanted to sponsor him in 4-H, provided we agreed. Nina and I were thrilled and gave our approval. James raced off to share the good news with Paul. 4-H would introduce him to other kids his age interested in farming. Nina noted the change in roles, with Paul now being grandpa and her just mom, and wished things could be simpler for adults. I reassured her that things would improve soon and suggested we start planning our wedding. As John and I walked around the house, I was regaining my strength. Inside, Marge and Nina prepared dinner while James helped Paul clean the barn, likely for the first time using the laundry room shower. John advised me to track my time between Tuesday and Thursday due to potential legal issues and collateral damage, though I preferred not to know the details in advance. He mentioned that Nina was very happy, and Marge felt like she had found a pot of gold. John also highlighted the need to address Nina's strained relationship with her parents. I suggested arranging a surprise engagement party after a Sunday service to introduce me to her family and show them Nina made the right choice. John agreed it was a good way to demonstrate my commitment without needing words. My assistant managed the service excellently, allowing me to relax with Nina and James while someone else led. Marge, John, and Stephen Pollard attended. After the service, Stephen informed me of my legal separation, and I instructed him to expedite the divorce. I offered the house and apartment buildings to my soon-to-be ex, kept the store and children, and agreed not to pay child support. I also requested a new will naming Nina as the sole beneficiary. Stephen noted this deal would be advantageous due to the refinancing of the apartments. I anticipated Vanessa's failure to maintain the properties would lead to foreclosure and reclaim the assets within 6 months to a year. On Thursday, after advising a church member about her troubled son, I was informed that the police had arrived with my oldest son, Adam, who had been involved in a pill sting. Adam could face charges as an accessory, as he was found in his uncle's car during a pills purchase. Adam was terrified. I instructed the detective to take Adam to his mother, but learned she and Tony Landers were in jail. I advised contacting Judge Donald Rotterdam for guidance, as I couldn't risk jail time. Adam, upset about the impounded car, claimed he didn't know his uncle's intentions. I warned him that despite being a juvenile and this being his first offense, he might face community service or tougher consequences due to his mother's situation and the court order against me. I advised him to learn from this experience and be more cautious. The officer took Adam to the station and said they would hold him until my meeting with the judge. I called Nina to update her, and she promised to prepare the third bed when she got home. After an hour with the judge, I learned that social services had painted me as a saint and Vanessa as a villain. I found it amusing, which made me laugh uncontrollably. The judge informed me that he had convinced the police officer to reconsider charges against Adam. Since Adam had truthfully claimed the car belonged to his grandmother, the officer agreed to a warning rather than court charges. Adam would need to report to the officer for a few weeks. The judge also mentioned that my generous divorce settlement offer had been accepted, and the divorce would be finalized tomorrow after the customary 90-day waiting period. The restraining order was voided, and custody of the children would be determined once Vanessa was out of jail. I thanked the judge and went to pick up Adam from the police station, where I learned Vanessa had been taken to a psych ward for observation. We returned to my old home to pack Adam's belongings, which were scattered and looked ransacked. Adam mentioned that he had been staying with friends and only returned home briefly to change clothes. The maid had quit, adding to the chaos. As we packed up items for cleaning, Adam expressed his concerns about moving in with Nina and acknowledged he had been wrong to side with his mother. I advised him to discuss his situation with Nina privately, as relationships require direct resolution of issues. Adam also expressed interest in working with Pastor Seth in youth ministry during the summer, wanting to explore the field before making any decisions about his future. I was surprised but pleased with Adam's maturity and handed him my cell phone to arrange the details with Seth. Seth was enthusiastic, and I was encouraged by the progress my son was making. After finishing the call, Adam shared that Seth advised him to get a couple of suits, or at least a sports jacket, dress pants, shirts, and ties for official church functions, while blue jeans and a t-shirt were acceptable for social events. I emphasized the importance of private communication and tact, explaining that diplomacy is a crucial skill for a minister. I added that being an a-hole was only appropriate when it was necessary. At home, Nina was nearly finished preparing dinner. Paul and Cora had taken James and Johnny out to give us some privacy. As I set the table, Adam and Nina had a private conversation that ended with both of them smiling. Adam asked to say grace, and did so impressively. After dinner, I retreated to my office to work on my sermon. When I emerged, I found Paul and Cora visiting with our 3 sons in the kitchen. Paul offered Adam the chance to learn to drive a tractor, but Adam mentioned he would be busy helping Pastor Seth with youth ministry for the summer and needed to arrange a schedule with him. Nina planned to meet Adam at work the next day to help him shop for the necessary attire. She reminded him that his appearance would reflect not only his dad and the church, but also God. Adam's reaction was one of surprise and realization. Cora commented that many people today lack respect and that Adam's awareness was rare. Paul shared a personal story about his own disrespectful behavior as a child and the severe consequences he faced, emphasizing the lasting impact of his father's discipline. Big John came by the bookstore on Friday to confirm that the surprise party was set for Sunday after the service. He suggested leaving it up to me whether to inform Nina that her parents would be attending the service. They would join us and slip in just before it started. Later in the day, Stephen informed me that Vanessa and Tony were arrested for illegal wiretapping, theft of government property, and money laundering, with the charges coming from the State Attorney General's office. Both denied the accusations. While I was doing bookkeeping in the office, a clerk handed me an envelope found on the coffee counter. Inside was a note from Sean McKay, suggesting that Vanessa and Tony might receive 10-year sentences if they were lucky, and mentioning a donation to the church to cover their losses. My sermon, which included a few unexpected elements, was well received. It addressed taking blessings for granted and resonated with many. Afterward, I asked Pastor Seth to close with prayer and shared our wedding date with him, asking if he would officiate. As the congregation sang, Seth stepped up to the platform. Seth announced that Adam would be joining him as a youth ministry assistant for the summer, with the possibility of continuing part-time during the school year. He also revealed that my divorce had been finalized and that I would officiate our wedding on November 28th. The congregation applauded both announcements. After the service, it took a while to leave as people had questions. Big John eventually told Nina and me about the surprise engagement party. He explained that Marge had already gone ahead and would meet us there. The event was a bring-your-own-bottle affair with a shared food arrangement. The Legion Hall was already crowded when we arrived. Adam asked to remove his necktie, and I did the same. Nina suggested he undo the top 2 buttons of his shirt. We entered with me carrying Johnny, and Nina and the boys walking arm in arm. As we walked in, we were greeted with cheers and congratulations. We were directed to the food line before the rush began. Nina went first while Marge took Johnny to meet Nina's mother for the first time. They had traveled 200 miles and would stay with Marge during their visit. As we settled with our plates, Nina found her parents. Her mother was surprised and delighted to see us. Nina's father explained he had been intrigued by what John had said about me and had come to see for himself. Impressed, he expressed his pride in accepting me as a son. Nina hugged her father as she had when she was younger, and someone called for the party to begin. Throughout the afternoon, my sons received many compliments on their appearance, and Adam enjoyed the attention from the girls. When the music started, Nina's father asked her to dance. Adam volunteered to watch Johnny while Nina danced. As Nina danced with her father, she was visibly emotional. John pulled me aside, sharing that Nina's father, a traditional Christian, had been moved by my sermon at church that morning. He was astonished to see us together and couldn't believe Nina was going to be a pastor's wife. John noted that any issues between Nina and her family were now resolved. I finally met Nina's parents during a Sunday dinner at Clark's, a family restaurant known for its good basic food. The conversation revealed many things we hadn't known before, and by the end, it was clear that they would no longer address us as Mr. and Mrs. Johnston, but simply as Mom and Dad. Meanwhile, the psychological and psychiatric evaluations confirmed Vanessa was medically incapable of standing trial and was committed due to tendencies to self-ending. Her downfall was the worst I had ever witnessed. Tony Landers received a 15-year sentence. I took advantage of the situation by purchasing the apartment buildings her lawyer had put up for sale with no money down. With low interest rates, I secured a 30-year open mortgage, planning to pay it off in 10 years. I reinstated the old property management group under the same terms as before. 6 months after our wedding, Paul and Cora sold us a 2-acre parcel from their farm. We are now building a 6-bedroom home on the land, and everyone is eagerly anticipating the arrival of our new granddaughter.